The Cats Whiskers podcast is proudly sponsored by the Bunkers Hill Hockley. Don't miss Panthers game day offers, including Coors Light at £2.50 a pint. Hello and welcome to tonight's edition of the Ask TCW podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. Wonder what we're going to be talking about tonight. If you don't already know, the DOPS rulings of today will pretty much dominate the show, but we have got a few other questions as well, which we will start off with, and then we will leave the show exclusively to the DOPS decisions from earlier today, which has caused a lot of questions coming from you guys. And also will no doubt cause a lot of discussion amongst ourselves. So who will that discussion be between? It will be between Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
Good evening.
And Andy Haywood.
Hello.
Okay, we are going to crack straight on with the questions because we have an awful lot. As I say, a majority of them are on the DOPS issue from earlier today. But if you do want to get in touch with us during the show, you can do. Best way is via Twitter. It's at CatsWhiskersTV and use the hashtag AskTCW if you would, please. Okay, we will crack on. And the first question is from Max Artis. And this is one that actually came just after last week's show had aired. And he says, why are fans more concerned about winning the league than being competitive in European competitions that will benefit the league as a whole, thus growing interest in the sport and having more of an impact? And you have a go at that one.
Oh, great. I'm not... Can you like both? Can I like both without being sitting on the fence too much? I don't know.
You know how people don't like to sit on the fence, Ant.
Oh, I know, but yeah, I mean, the league is the bread and butter. This is what we pay to see week in, week out. This is what we pay our season ticket money for. The vast majority of people turn up, every week and see us competing in a league game. However, like Max has alluded to, our progress in the CHL, winning the Conti Cup last year, Cardiff's progress in the CHL this year, Sheffield and Braid's wins in previous seasons, they've all added to the Elite League's aura, if you like, and the way we're viewed across Europe. So it is literally a two-pronged thing. I think I can see where people are moaning about because, like I said, that's what the vast majority of the season is all about. It's all about the league. And that's not, get me wrong, I know I've joked about it in the past. We're not going to win the CHL. If we do, we should just close the club up at the end of the season and go, done. We can't beat it anymore. We might as well just finish right here, right now. That's probably why. It's because the vast majority of the season, obviously, it's your bread and butter. These are the teams. These are the games we pay to see in all the time.
Think on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Ant. I mean, I'm quite excited by the whole CHL progress, and obviously, yeah, the league is where it all sort of comes from. The league is the important trophy in this country. Whether the imports buy into that or not is another story, but that's just where it is. The football culture sort of bleeds through, if you will, in terms of importance of trophies. I think the European trophy, not similar to football. I mean, any team would love to win a European trophy. I mean, we'd love to win a European trophy, but I don't think for 1 minute we're actually going to win the whole blooming thing. But what we've done is incredible, and I would like to think that when we're sort of done with this whole CHL adventure, wherever it does actually end, we can then turn our main focus to the league. Yeah, but as I said, I don't think we're going to be in the CHL for much longer anyway. But what a fantastic spectacle it's been. But I think that a lot of fans are seeing it as a distraction rather than something positive. I think there are a lot of fans who value our domestic league competition over everything else. And I think, without wanting to sound too disparaging, there's a lack of a big picture mentality, because if we continue to progress in the CHL and we continue to do well in future competitions, and if we continue to present ourselves well in a European competition, then what we could see is a better quality of imports actually wanting to come to the Elite League rather than coming to the Elite League as a stepping stone. Yeah, and if the quality of the imports gets better, then you'd like to think that the quality of the Brits would have to get better because they'd have to keep up. And in turn, that can only be a good thing for the British game. So, it's very sort of long-term thinking, but I think it's important. Personally, it might be a far deeper answer than I intended to give, to be honest. But it's a little thing now, but it could be a big thing later on. It's not necessarily us that's directly going to benefit. It might be, just imagine that Belfast win the league this year, and they go into the CHL. They've got the benefit of the good standing that us and Cardiff, Braehead and Sheffield have already, put forward in contributing. And, they then have the responsibility of carrying that reputation on. And if they do, then it's just more good publicity for our league. And God knows we need it right now.
Yeah, more on that later. We'll move on to the next question. And Andy, I'll start with you. It comes from Lee Constable, who got in touch with us via Facebook. He says, I listened to Corey Nielsen's interview after the Cardiff game and heard him say it looked like they were carrying pianos on their backs after a long, tough stretch of games. And as I listened, a thought popped into my head, a question I thought I'd pass on to you and see what you all thought. We have played a lot of games so far with Elite League, Challenge Cup and CHL. On many occasions we've had 2 weekend games, then a midweek CHL or Challenge Cup game. So potentially fatigue is creeping in with a second weekend game, which I can't blame the players for with a busy schedule. In hindsight, do you think we should have assembled the current roster we have now on permanent deals, and also maybe have added 2 extra imports on short contracts until the end of the CHL group stage, just as a bit of cover, with the view to letting them go once we have finished with the CHL? I mean, looking at the Steelers, I believe they have 2 import spare skaters, 1 now I think after today's news about Romberg, but I believe that's down to injury. It just made me think, should we have a couple of spare imports short term to ride the manic busy schedule?
Well, I think it's difficult because in an ideal world, yes, I think it makes a lot of sense, but obviously we saw realistically damage. We saw what damage short-term contracts can do when we were in the CHL last time. We signed some players on short-term contracts, and the dynamic of the club, the identity of the team and stuff like that was sort of all over the place for the rest of the year as people came and went, and we had a lot of players on that roster initially, and then we had one guy who was injured in his first game and we never saw him again. We had I think Podolsak and Higgins both got injured in the CHL. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
It's one of them things. I think injury cover is fair enough, and I think I don't have an issue with having an extra import netminder like we've got. I don't necessarily have a problem with having an extra import skater for injury cover, but you have to you have to be able to manage ice time. You have to be able to keep everybody happy, because realistically, if you sign a player who's willing to just be the injury cover and play when needed for a whole season, then you're not going to attract the quality that you would want. We've seen in the past people like Yunus Sari and Sarkanis who were, don't get me wrong, it's not like they were abysmal hockey players, but they were nowhere, they were never anything more than sort of fourth liners. And if you've got an injury to a top line player and you're bringing them in, then you're rapidly reducing the quality on the ice. And you could argue that it would be even less if they weren't icing, but it's one of them things, and dynamics and stuff like that. But I think having short-term contracts solely for the CHL is a bad idea.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Because we've seen it before, and I don't think it works. And to be fair, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we're the only team that's actually done that, that's been in the CHL. Is that right? I don't think Sheffield, Brayhead or Cardiff
No,
I don't think they did.
I think it was acknowledged that it was a mistake at the time. I think even Neil Black made reference to it, that it was a mistake to bring in CHL only contract players.
Yeah, and it's it swings around. But what I will say is, one of the things that I think we have done well this year, and it's we've talked about how much of a coup it was anyway at the time and in previous podcasts, but I also think bringing in Brett Perlini has a lot to do with not necessarily spare imports, but you signed a British player of import quality who's becoming one of our better players week in, week out, and that helps with the depth massively, because whereas if you don't have him in the team and an import gets injured, then you're looking at replacing the import like for like. But realistically, with the luxury of having Brett Perlini, you can technically we're not playing an import short, because realistically we're always playing an import more because of Perlini's quality. He is British and he is classed as a Brit, but he is he's import quality, and having someone like him, I think, is one of the really good things about the depth of this team, and obviously, I think that might be one of the reasons why necessarily we haven't gone down the sort of multiple sort of cover and healthy scratch sort of players.
Okay. Tina, anything to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, Andy's covered it perfectly.
Yeah, fair enough. So thanks for your question, Lee. Next question. This may cause some discussion. It comes from Graham Farley. He says, whilst we've only seen Patrick Galbraith a couple of times, who is our best netminder? Tina, kick us off.
Dan Green. Okay. Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Best netminder. I think it's a very subjective answer. Best. Well,
no sitting on the fence. Remember? No
sitting on the fence. I know. Ask me to say anything bad about a Panthers goalie, and I think I'd rather just shrivel up and cease to exist.
Get yourself to Bardills. Get yourself to Bardills right now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. I'll make sure I'll pick the best posts. I mean, if you're taking it statistically, Galbraith is currently statistically better than Garnett, but Garnett's played more games, so there's been more opportunity for him to let goals in and such. I don't know. I don't think it's so much a question of who's best. I think it's who's best at the time. I think it's just a case of going with the hot goalie. I think it's and all the games we've got to manage all three of our netminders. I really don't know. I mean, I'm not a hockey person, tactically per se. I don't know anything about coaching, so I can't really speak to, the skill level of either netminder. If they stop a puck going in, that's fine. I don't care how they do it. I think Garnett's got the he's got the disadvantage, if you will, of having played more games for the Panthers. Has Galbraith had time to settle in yet? Have the netminders had time to settle in with, working with another two netminders instead of it just being the import and the backup? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer for who's the best goalie. But I would just like to see us manage them so they all have the potential to be their best.
Okay. Andy.
Well, I'm probably not the best person to ask because literally I've only seen Galbraith playing that Turku away match on the telly. That's literally the only thing I've seen of him. But having said that, he was very, very good in that game. And I think realistically, until they sort of turned it on towards the end of that game because they needed the regulation win, I think he acquitted himself incredibly well. That being said, I think realistically, when we signed the roster at the start of the season with Zakharchenko, Garnett was the number one. That was his role. I don't necessarily think that's changed with the introduction of Galbraith. I think unless he goes on a bit of a slide or a dip in form, I think that Garnett will be our number one, and Galbraith will be there, sort of pushing for ice time. And obviously, Garnett made a comment. I can't remember, was it on the commentary or in an interview, saying that he signed but wasn't expected to play all the games. It was already sort of.
I think it was when Galbraith signed. He actually says it was on the Instagram thing he did with Callum, and he said then that he actually welcomed the signing because it took the pressure off him.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that is why we've signed Galbraith. I think that's why we had initially signed Zakharchenko, and I think realistically with our team, I think the signing of Galbraith doesn't necessarily change our position on netminders. I personally think that Garnett is our first choice netminder, but I think Galbraith is an exceptionally good luxury that we've got.
Yeah, I would agree. Ant, your thoughts?
I think we're lucky in that we've got two goalies that could walk into any of the other Elite League teams and be their number one. I think, like you've already said, I don't think Garnett was expecting to play 3 games a week. Especially, he's 34, 35 now. On top of that, he's got his uni work to do. So, and I think where we're lucky as well is that Garnett, from what I've seen of Galbraith so far, Garnett and Galbraith are both puck-playing goalies as well. They're very similar styles, so our defence shouldn't take too much. There shouldn't be too much difference. Our defence having to adjust to depending on who's in. I don't think we've seen enough of Galbraith yet for me to properly answer the question, but I think Corey still sees Garnett as our number one, hence the reason he played against Brayhead when we needed a win Wednesday, and then he played the big game. No disrespect to Edinburgh, but you'd be expecting to beat Edinburgh at home. Whereas going away to the current champions, a place that we don't have a very good record, look who played in net. And I know we didn't have the greatest of first periods, but Garnett was the one that was chosen. So I think in Corey's eyes, Garnett is number one. But like I said, Galbraith is a very, very good goalie. He's had a very good start to his career with us. Long may it carry it on, and I hope that there is a proper contest now, and Corey goes with the hot goalie this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we shall move on to our next question, which will be our last non-DOPS question. So get ready for this one. If you're there desperately waiting for the DOPS DOPS discussion. It is coming very, very shortly. But here we come after this question, which comes from Richard Bradley on Twitter. He says, is Josh Shaller's lack of league points an issue, or are his performances reflected in the overall productivity of the Farmer Schaller Pellini line? Now, thanks to our good friend Rob Hitchin, who I spoke to early today and pulled together some stats for me at very, very short notice. I've actually got Josh Schaller's stats here for this season. So in the CHL, 6 games, 5 goals, 2 assists for 7 points and a +3 rating. In the Challenge Cup, 4 games, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points, but there's no plus-minus rating for him. In the Elite League, 10 games, 1 goal, 6 assists for 7 points and a +5 plus-minus rating, which puts him second in the team behind Evan Mosey, who leads with +7. So the total is 20 games, 8 goals, 11 assists for 19 points. Now, I think I can see where Richard is pointing at his EIHL stats as opposed to anything else. But on that question, Andy, do you think there's a problem with Schaller, or do you, like me, think I'm quite happy with him?
No, I don't have an issue with it at all. I think realistically, you'd like to see him performing like he did on in the CHL, but I think that line on the whole is our best line. So I could understand the potential worry, as it were, if that wasn't our best line, or if if it wasn't producing or anything like that. But I think he's playing quite well, and I think he's producing in perhaps slightly other areas than just than just obviously goal scoring. I think realistically, these players are always going to go through slight fits and troughs and stuff like that. But I think ultimately that I'm happy with where Schaller is, and I think that eventually he will probably come good at some point, and I'm sure he will be there or thereabouts in our sort of top point scoring. I certainly don't envisage that we'll see like a guy who doesn't produce anything near what we know he's capable of. I think he'll be pretty good for plenty of goals and plenty of points throughout the season. Just like everything, it would just be nice if it was a hell of a lot more all the time. It's just one of them things. I think realistically, eventually it will sort of even out, and I think that it will come good.
Well, to put it into perspective, he scored 7 points in 10 Elite League games, so 0.7 points a game. His ECHL average was 0.73 points a game. Now, a lot of people say the EIHL is on par with the ECHL, so you could say he's pretty much there or thereabouts, couldn't you, Tina?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Schaller. In fact, for me personally, I think he's exceeding my expectations personally. I was expecting him to sort of maybe be, second line level sort of scoring, but no, he's sort of brought himself to the forefront really. He's a darn good player, and he seems to have it all, because unexpectedly last weekend, now we know he can throw them. He's a very good player, and one that I enjoy watching. So and he's putting decent points on the board. As I say, he's putting more points than I expected him to up already. And if he carries on at that sort of rate, fine. Just crack on.
Okay. And anything to add?
No, I think Schaller's a bloody good player, and we're going to see a lot more from him coming when we get into the meat and potatoes. Bloody hell, what am I talking about? Meat and potatoes of the league when we've got nothing else to distract us.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so sit back, strap in, get ready for. However,
you got a special sound clip for this?
No, I haven't. Unfortunately, I did try to find one, but time was against us when it was suggested. So we started with our DOPS questions. Now, I have currently in front of me 18 questions. 18 questions which relate to DOPS and obviously what has happened today. So for those that don't know, to give you a bit of background, after a few incidents in the game against Belfast and Sheffield at Sheffield Arena on Sunday, Spiros Galakis was given a 3-game ban for kicking, and Colton Fretter was given a 1-game ban for attacking Spiros Galakis for hitting him into the boards. Most people have seen it. The clip and footage has been on social media all week. Galakis himself also got a 2+10 earlier in the game for checking from behind, which was also reviewed. Sheffield requested that the original hit on Fretter also be looked at. That was upgraded to a 5+ game. But all Galakis' ban has come from the alleged kick at Colton Fretter. Colton Fretter, who quite clearly attacks Galakis, and most people thought would be somewhere in the region of a 3 to 5 game ban, only gets a 1-game ban. Now, this first question goes back to something that happened with DOPS last week. It was posted by Bobness on the Cage Forum late last week, and for this show. And he says, what have DOPS been smoking this week? Paquette's hit, so Paquette of Coventry, who got a 2-game ban last week, is 100% stone cold, shoulder to shoulder, and they upgraded a minor penalty on the player they themselves said they weren't even looking at. Excuse me. So, Ant, you have a go at that one.
I don't know what they've been spoken, but maybe they should.
This is obviously the prelude to what
yeah, this is before
the starter.
Today. I mean, I was gobsmacked, and I was quite vocal, certainly with our group, about the hit, and friends in Coventry as well, and none of us can understand where this 2-game ban has come from. It's a clean mid-ice hit. It's shoulder to shoulder, like Bobness said. And then the caveat was when they also reviewed a play that they'd not previously announced. So does that mean that the one thing we've been crying about in that the whole game tape should be reviewed, not specific circumstances? Does that happen now? It takes questions than it does provide answers. Unfortunately, it's an absolutely ridiculous decision. And then when you come to what's happened today,
it makes it all the more ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. And this, I mean, we will go on to talk about this and where DOP's credibility lies. But everyone watched that. Everyone saw that hit, and virtually everyone. I think 99% of people who I saw commenting on it on social media all said, well, it's a fair check. There's nothing wrong with that.
Now, it's not even like he's blindsided him either. He's come in from the side, and the contact is shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, and it's like, are they taking us for fools a bit here? Because we can all see that is a fine hit, and when it's slowed down, it shows it's a fine hit. It just beggars belief that was given a 2-game ban. I mean, Andy, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, it was it's just an open ice hit. There was nothing. The arms weren't extended. The hit. I thought it was more sort of shoulder to chest than shoulder to shoulder, but that doesn't. That makes no difference whatsoever. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly fair. And I was amazed that it got a ban. Even with the talk of DOPS and credibility, I was still genuinely amazed that it was suspendable. I'm sure people will say that they weren't shocked because of what's happened in the past, or or that type of thing, and how they just sort of make things up seemingly on the spot at times. But I mean, genuinely gobsmacked by that decision. I say there are some things where you disagree with what they've given, but if you sort of take a step back and look at it, there are times when you can understand why perhaps it's been given. But this one is just ridiculous. I don't understand where they've got anything from that regarding something that's suspendable. It just. I don't think that there's an agenda going on as such. I just think there's an awful lot of incompetence going on in that scenario. I don't think that there's I don't think there's people out to get other teams and all that sort of stuff, which you do hear, and realistically with decisions like that you're always going to hear, I suppose. But I do think it's just purely incompetence. I just think it's I think it's poor that was a ban because it really didn't warrant it.
Okay, moving on to the next question, and this came early today before the bans were actually announced. So this was a question that came to us this morning from Jevon Swinscoe on Facebook. He says, having watched the Sheffield versus Belfast incident where Freta was kicked out, what is your take on the incident from start to finish? What penalties should have been called, and what bans will come from this? Well, don't answer the last bit of the question because we know what bans have come from it. But Tina, your start to finish view of the incident.
Well, I mean, the start to finish, you can't really talk about it without sort of mentioning the fact that Galactus had already had a 2+10 for an earlier check on. I think it was Nelson, wasn't it? And then he makes a bit of a daft hit again on Freta, which you'd say is probably about the same level of severity. You could have easily called it a 2 minute for boarding. You could have had another 2+10 in the same game for him. But the fact that it went completely uncalled. I mean, if he'd made that hit somewhere on the open ice, then probably it's no issue. But because of where it was, I think that's where the problem is. That's why it's got so much attention, and that's why it's annoyed Freta so much. So you would think that if you get a 2+10, checking from behind, I assume I think it would have been. So if you get a 2+10 checking from behind penalty earlier in the game, you'd think that you might be a little bit more cautious, going through the rest of the game, because you've already put yourself out of the game for 12 minutes. And this is a team that is already under strength, so they really could have done with him, and he gets nothing from that. We all said it at the time. It's just so unlike Freta to react like that. He's one of their real skill guys, and it's just not something you'd expect from him. But he just absolutely lost it, and for reasons that we talked about on Monday. First of all, the hit doesn't get called by the referee. Second of all, not one of his teammates goes across to Galactus and says, "Oh, hang on a minute, that's not right. That's out of order." But it's a catalogue of errors, and if Mike Hicks calls that, even was it? I'm sorry, I don't want to start the wrong referee. Was it Mike Hicks?
It was Mike.
Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. If he calls that, even if he calls a 2 minute for boarding, then we're not talking about the rest of this. Because Galactus goes in the box again, and Freta feels a little bit less like he's been thrown towards the boards for no gain whatsoever, or for no, and nothing coming of it. He feels a little bit more protected, potentially.
I'll throw something else in here regarding protection, because none of his teammates did anything about it.
No, but that's what I mean. We talked about that on Monday. Not one person on that team, and I mean this season, I've seen Robert Lakovic square up to somebody. I forget which game it was. I can't remember who we were playing, but I seem to recall that it was a scrum around somebody's net, and I remember thinking, blimey, it must be serious if Lako's squaring up to somebody, because he's such a mild-mannered guy. So to annoy him, and he will. He's got involved, and for not one of the Steelers players, who looked at that and saw Freta sprawled on the floor, for not one of them to do anything, I think is a bit of a problem. And so you've got two opportunities to stop this whole circus in its tracks. You've got Mike Hicks to call the penalty, or a Steelers teammate to go and face up to Galakos. That could have meant a fight, and maybe again, somebody challenges him to a fight, makes him answer for what he's done, and then it's done. And maybe only Galakos maybe gets what he ended up getting was an upgrade on the non-call, and then you move on. It's just bonkers. There were opportunities, and those it didn't happen. Those opportunities to stop us talking about all of this, and to for it to escalate to the point that it has now in such a short space of time, which it was going to. It was there, wasn't taken by various people.
Okay. So next question comes from Dill1105 on the cage. And this is an interesting one, and Andy, I'm gonna let you have a go at this one. He says, are players like Spiros Galakis good for the league, or the sort of player we should be trying to weed out? Personally, I think guys like him keep things exciting and help put bums on seats, so long as it doesn't cross the line, which I think he's flirting with, but hasn't crossed. Now, has he crossed the line, is I suppose the first question, but is he the sort of player that needs weeding out, or is he an exciting player that should be left in?
I don't have an issue with him at all. I mean, he's made a couple of bad hits in a game, and then I appreciate he's been banned for kicking. I don't think it's a kick as such. I certainly don't think it's the. I don't think it's the most dangerous thing he did that night, to be honest. But at the end of the day, his skate has made contact, so it has to be called. No, I don't think he should be weeded out as such. I don't necessarily think that they should be lauded, these players, but they are potentially exciting. They're bums on seats, and realistically, we've had guys in the league that have done far worse, far more often, than what's gone on there, and in some areas they're folk legends and fan favourites and stuff, and in other areas they're hated. I don't think we should be making a case to sort of get rid of players like this in the slightest, because like I say, he's done a couple of dumb things in a game, but realistically, the majority of them are split-second decisions, and he's hit numbers and thrown a couple of dirty hits.
Fair enough. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so.
Fair enough. Okay. Right, next question. This comes from Jerome Lucy from Twitter. He says, how can Paquette be a 2-game ban and Freta be a 1-game ban? These two hits look miles apart. One clean, one dirty. A dangerous precedent. Ant.
It can't be. In no round. The only way that the Paquette game is a 2-game, the Paquette hit is a 2-game ban, is if somebody's watching the wrong videotape, and they're watching a hit from a completely different game. Freta to only get 1 game today, for regardless of whether his stick was there or not, it's a check to the head. It's a check from behind. It's basically an attack. Paquette is a mid-game situation. It's a mid-ice hit, and we've already said it's clean. We think it's clean. 99% of the Elite League fans that have commented on it have said it's clean. Fretter is, regardless of what happened beforehand, Fretter has set himself up here. And I've had, like everybody, I'm surprised, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. It's all been blowing up this afternoon on the Fretter thing, and I've had comments from people in Sheffield who are also, as rather than laughing at Dop's decision, they're also bemused by the length of the ban. They're actually, one of them in particular is now worried because the Fretter ban is so lenient that is it going to now take players to take it into their own hand? We've already seen this happen once when a couple of years ago, Tyson Marsh, his ban was reduced. Had they kept the original ban, there wouldn't have been that fight against Cam. Fair play to Tyson Marsh. He stepped up like a man, faced Cam one-on-one. Unfortunately, we all know what happened at the end of that fight.
Yeah. And that was the last time this happened. So there is a precedent there. It's happened before. Players have taken this into their own hands, and for Tyson Marsh,
it's
in
dangerous.
the worst possible way.
It's dangerous, and nobody could probably blame anybody on the Giants roster if they take a whack at Fretter now.
The thing is, they're going to think, well, I'm only going to get one game for it.
Exactly.
I actually agree with that, because I think no matter when we play Cardiff, Jansen fights Tyson Marsh, regardless. And yes, he might not connect with that punch that did the damage, but they are always going to fight. There's no two ways about it. After a hit like that, there is always going to be something in response. I think to say that if he had been banned for longer, then nothing would have happened. I disagree.
But it might have diffused. It might have diffused the situation a bit more. I mean, time heals. And what have you. It was the fact that the game was so close.
I think there was a lot of anger that the ban had been reduced as well on the.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that anger transpired to Cam Jansen. Cam Jansen was just doing his job as a tough guy and sticking up for his teammate who'd been knocked out stone cold in a 7-1 game. And I think that happens whether it's a month later that we play them or a day later that we play them. Okay. I just think the scenario of what happened with Jansen and Tyson Marsh, I just think is an unfortunate side effect of that kind of thing.
So what's the scenario now? Because surely the scenario is the same. Okay, Fretter didn't injure Galakis, thankfully.
Well, no, apparently he has.
He
has. Adam Keefe's come out and said he's got concussion, and he's going to be missing more than the 3 games he's banned for.
Okay, well that puts a completely different slant on it. So, okay, Andy, what happens now then?
Well, I put it this way: if I was a Belfast Giants fan and no one stuck up for Goulikas in the next game, in the next time they played Sheffield, when Fretter's there, I would be disappointed. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want someone to go out and injure him, or I want someone to go out and decapitate him. But things need to be done. It's no different to the Rick Kozak scenario in Hull. It's no different to anything like that. These things happen. There will always be bad hits in hockey. There will always be bad things in hockey where people go over the top and get too violent, and there will always be retribution. And in my opinion, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever.
Okay, fine. Tina, anything to add there?
Well, just to sort of return to the original question, really. The 2 games for a ban that everybody thinks is clean and 1 game for a hit that everybody knows isn't. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Jerome Lucy. That is a dangerous precedent, and it's. Yeah, you could, and I agree with what Andy said. No matter when Tyson Marsh returned to the ice, I think that fight was going to happen. Maybe it wouldn't have had the same result a few games down the line. But I think that fight still happens, and I think Frette needs to ready himself. I know Frette was sort of hard done to initially by Galactus, but you can't react like that. And he's actually, if what Adam Keefe has tweeted is to be believed, if that is the truth, then he's actually done more damage than what Galactus did to him originally. So he needs to either accept the fact that somebody is probably going to challenge him the next time Belfast play Sheffield, or he needs to find a way to get out of that if he's going to. But the sort of moral code that exists within hockey, I don't think he can. And I think he's I think he is gonna have to accept that. A more lengthy ban may have served to sort of keep him out of that, but one game, and there is a whole fan base, a whole team, and one very angry coach that feel very hard done to, and I think there's a lot of expectancy now for the next Belfast Sheffield game.
Okay, I'm going to bring in this question from Colin Bassford, who sent this via Facebook. He says, did Dops just give the green light for players to take the law into their own hands on a missed call? Anyone? I'll throw that open.
Well, yeah, they have. Ultimately,
well, yeah. Because if you're going to do that, and you're only going to get one game, and you think it's a bad enough hit or a bad enough incident to deserve the one game ban, you're going to take it. Sorry, Andy.
Everything that I've said regarding retribution and things like that, regardless of that, what has happened is deserving of far more than 1 game and 3 games, in my opinion. Both incidents, in my opinion, have got off quite lightly. Now, with that in mind, I do think that they've sort of given the green light. But that being said, as I've explained earlier on, I do think something like that would get sort of in-house treatment, shall we say, from a team because of a type of incident that it was. And I think going back very quickly to the last question, and obviously it does touch on taking things into their own hands. And like I say, I thoroughly expect Belfast to retaliate in one way or another. I do think that Colton Frette will be a protected man next time they play. I think you'll see him. I think you'll see him being stuck up for very quickly by his teammates whenever there's a scrum around the net or after a whistle or anything like that. But what I do think as well is that if he takes his medicine, it gets it out of the way, and you don't have a similar situation to what we saw in Hull with Kozak, where he did what he did in Nottingham. He's given the option and the opportunity to fight and put it to bed. He turns it down, and then for the rest of the game it becomes a bit of a sideshow. And the hockey was, realistically, no one remembers anything about the hockey that day. They just remember what happened with everyone sort of trying to get at Rick Kozak for 60 minutes. So I do think they've set a dangerous precedent. And I do think that realistically there would always be some form of retribution, but I do think that I'm amazed at the length of time that they've both got. I really am, and I think that with that in mind, it is a dangerous precedent.
This is what I just wanted to. Sorry, Jono. We've talked predominantly about Frette, but I think Spyro's got away with it as well. I tweeted into the show on Monday. I think he should have got 5 in total. I I don't think it's an actual kick, but still you can't lie around on the ice with your blades flying around.
No, you can't put your blade up, and I think it's fair enough. He's got 3 games for that. The thing is, the Czech 2-fretter I thought was 2+10 personally. I mean, obviously Dops have raised that to 5+ game, and I'm not seeing the other one, so I can't give an informed opinion about the other Czech that was reviewed, because it wasn't on Sheffield's highlights when they put it out.
I'm absolutely certain it was. I'm certain I've seen it. I know I'm sort of going off on topic here, but I when you guys put the highlights in our WhatsApp group, I watched them. I watched about the first 2 or 3 minutes of them, and I'm pretty sure I saw it. So, but I think the 2 hits are probably of equal severity. But that's sort of by the by. One got called 2+10 and one got called nothing. So obviously Mike Hicks disagrees with me.
But like on Spyro, I think he's a danger now, turning into a bit of a Kevin Noble, in that he's going to be a marked man, regardless of who he plays. People are going to be wary of him, and it's not going to take anything. It's not going to take much for somebody to turn around and smack him in the face hard.
Well, I suppose it depends how long he's out for. If he's concussed, and
well, yeah, I hope it's obviously not a massively serious injury, but he's you guys talked about it on Monday. He's the most penalised player already in the league. I know there's a lot of misconducts in there, but he has been doing these late hits and what have you. And it is going to take somebody, and I'm surprised somebody didn't do him before this, to be fair.
That in its own right, though, is something that amazes me with regarding the length of the ban, is the fact that they've upgraded his penalties. So they've upgraded... Let me see if I've got this right. They've upgraded his 2+10 to 5+ game.
Yeah.
They've upgraded the one that wasn't called to 5+ game or 2+10?
Game, yeah. 5+ game.
So he's had 2 5+ games, plus he's had a 5+ match for the kicking, that's then come with an extra 2-game ban.
Which can be appealed.
Yeah. He's had 3 misconducts in 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Surely that in its own right, regardless of whether whether you think that they're wrong or not, the fact is he's been given 3 misconduct penalties, 2 games and a match misconduct penalty in one 60-minute game, and bear in mind that he's only been given a 3-game suspension for kicking. I mean, surely there should be some surely there should be some sort of decision based on that fact alone as to regardless of whether it's 2 games for checking from behind, 2 game penalties, but obviously don't carry a suspension. But surely if you do 2 in one game, surely they've got to look at it and think, you know what, we should probably suspend him for something. The fact that he's done, he's repeat offended in the same 60 minutes.
Well, not only that, doesn't it all tot up anyway? Once they get to so many game penalties, they get an automatic ban anyway.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that will probably be their defence as to why they've not done it, because they'll say, well, it adds to his, if he gets 5 misconducts, then he has to sit out or whatever. But I'm just amazed that the fact that he's had 3 major misconduct penalties in one game hasn't been included in his ban. I'm mind blown.
Okay. Obviously, we've still got loads of questions to get through, because you did send us, and we're probably not going to get through all of them. So I'm really sorry if your question isn't asked, but I'm sure you can appreciate we've had a lot of questions regarding the same subject. So please bear with us as we plough through the tens of questions that we had since the decision was announced. So next one I'm going to go to, it comes from Alex McElwain, who sent this on Twitter. He says, is it time for DOPS to disband, or say who is actually making these decisions? If a player gets injured being jumped, the league is responsible. Tina?
Well, I mean, the thing about DOPS is, from what I understand, it can't disband, especially because it's not actually a group of people who are sort of involved in one collective. Well,
but I don't know 100% for sure because we've never really been told.
And its own right is wrong.
Yeah, if it's just one person is wrong, and I mean a couple of seasons ago, didn't we have this sort of scenario where there was like a collection of people, and we'd just choose a couple of people to send it out to, and then they would give their rulings
as well, weren't
they? And that's, I mean that's pish as well. I'm sorry. I mean, that's because you've got several different people from different backgrounds, and you're sending one incident to this person, one incident to this person, and next week you could be sending something of a similar ilk to a third person, and all three of them could have a completely different perspective on it, because some of the things are sort of open to interpretation, and we don't seem to have any like minimum tariffs or anything like that. So the whole thing is just completely wide open. I mean, there's like, if we sort of take the NHL's description, as I said, they have minimum tariffs. There's like, if you do this is the minimum amount of games you can be banned for, and if we feel that as a panel that the severity of the incident warrants it, we'll add more games to it. And we've got like the double IHF sort of rulings, if you will, but then you've got the interpretations, which is a problem. And if it is just one person, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but we were maybe sort of on the right track with the several different people, but I think in what you maybe have to do in that sort of thing is take like the gymnastics average kind of thing, where you send it off to, if you've got 12 people on a DOPS panel, you send it out to all 12 people, and then you find some sort of median out of all of that. You find some sort of average, what everybody thinks. You have to have consistency. And if you can't even have consistency on the people who are running the panel, then how can you have consistency in the decisions? I mean, one of the other things that's come up, is it Omar Pasha got 2 games for throwing a water bottle onto the ice, and it was given unsportsmanlike conduct. That's that, and you can't. And I know, people are comparing that, saying you can get 2 games for throwing a water bottle on the ice, and you get one game for checking somebody to their head, in a charged attack, if you will.
It was actually changed to charging. For charging.
Exactly. But we all know what it was. We've all seen the video. However you dress it up, Galakos got checked to the head. And Adam Keefe, his coach, now says he's concussed. So, and that didn't happen on its own. Anyway, so, but the thing is, you cannot, just to return to my point about Pasha's ban and Fretter's ban, just as a big example I can pluck out of the air. That ban given to Omar Pasha was a completely different DOPS panel to what we've got now. And that is one other thing in a collection of things that is just wrong with the Elite League Department of Player Safety. If you cannot have consistency year on year, or some sort of standard practice year on year, then how can you have consistency with the decisions that come out of that panel? And if what it is now is just one man who used to be a referee in this country, if that's it, then that's just mind-blowing. That's absolutely mind-blowing. You cannot have one man making those decisions. How can one man make those decisions when one man who is on the ice on the night apparently doesn't get those decisions right? Don't get it. Don't get it. So we don't. I think, just to summarise, we don't know who the DOPS panel is. We don't know what, if it's more than one person, we don't know what the qualifications of them are. We don't know year on year. We don't seem to know what the DOPS process is, and just the decisions that come back are baffling because of the process itself. The process itself is baffling, which is why the decisions that come out of it are just the same.
Fair enough. Okay, then next question. Not sure we. Is DOPS fit for purpose? Is it damaging the league's ability to attract better players? What, if any, ideas would you have for how it can be improved? That comes from Bagheera on the cage. So, Ant, you have a stab?
Not anymore.
Sorry?
It's a joke. Not anymore. They're a joke.
I think they've done themselves some incredible damage over the past couple of weeks. You know, with the Paquette decision and then this decision today. I don't see how they personally. I don't see how they can come back from it. But you know.
It's just. I just don't understand. I know we're all humans, so we will all see things in different lights. And if the DOPS panel is, as they have said in the past, it's a different group of people each time, then yes, you are going to get decisions that are of varying degrees, and some of them we won't agree with, some of them we will agree with. That's human nature. Just to touch on the water bottle thing, I don't think we can compare the incidents because they are, like Tina says, they are completely different incidents. You've got a misconduct there for something, whereas this is, dangerous play. It's no different. I mean, the misconduct thing, you wouldn't say that. Say if you spat in somebody's face, that'd probably be a 2-game ban, 2 or 3 game ban. But that's completely different to checking somebody from behind into the boards, or then charging across the ice and, taking them out with a flying forearm. I just don't understand where DOPS are coming from now, and the Elite League is going to be under a lot of pressure now. It's already started tonight. You've seen the tweets from various people from Belfast. You've seen tweets from Manchester Storm have released something taking the mickey out of the decision. You've had people like Neil Russell's commenting on it. You've got players that have played in this league, played in the top leagues around the world, now linking to sites across the pond. The well-known, well-respected journalist sites. So if this gets picked up now, it's going to make the league look even more of a joke than it is, and that's down to what DOPS have done today and what they've done over the last couple of weeks, and it's ruining. Like Brock has mentioned, it's ruining the good work that the league is actually putting in. There's a lot of good work going on in the league, and that is just being taken away by a person or a collective persons who have made these decisions and basically can't seem to see their backside from their elbow.
Okay. We've been going for over an hour, so we're just going to have a couple more questions. You'll be pleased to know, because they are all still on DOPS and Colton Fretter's ban and Galakis. So the next question, where is it? This is an interesting one, and I am going to put it to all of you. And it comes from Mark Renton. How many games will Colton Fretter have got if he played for the Caps?
Wow. Wow. He would have got 1 game, obviously.
Okay.
He would have had a 1-game suspension. There's nothing in that whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think there's an agenda. I don't want to think. I don't want to think there is. I can't. If I thought there was an agenda, then and if I thought that he's only got a 1-game ban because he's a Steelers player, then we may as well just not bother. We may as well just stop the league right now, because if the Steelers players can do whatever they want and just start charging at people and giving them a concussion, then this league is done. This league is absolutely over.
Anybody else? Okay, I think the silence speaks volumes there. This next one comes from Joe Barm. He says, does the decisions made by the Department of Player Safety cancel out all the good Panthers and Devils have done for the league this season in the CHL? Especially with players publicly stating that this league won't protect them because a player will always value their health over which league they play in. And I suppose this comes in this week where Guildford Flames, Lillestrøm Carlsen, had to retire at 24 because of 5 concussions. And this is what can happen. This is players' lives at stake here, and livelihoods. And, what about Joe's comment there? Does it undo the good that Panthers and Devils have done for the league this season with the CHL exploits? Or are they two totally different things that one really wouldn't cancel out the other?
I would just like to reference, and I've probably said this on this podcast before, I have a friend who has written my absolute all-time favourite song lyric, and it is, "Bad news has the wings, good news must dream of growing." You absolutely can, you can put out, you can tweet out, you can put out on social media, email out all the fantastic things you like in the whole wide world. But, let's return to our old friend, Joe Grimaldi. You send that video does the rounds of him chucking a helmet at Max Perron, and all of a sudden we are right back to where we started. So, yes, quite frankly, something like this gets around. And, there's all sorts of players on Twitter weighing in with it. And it just we've talked about all the good work that teams have done, I think we talked about it on Monday. The good players that we have got, we've been able to attract to play not just for our team but our league as well. They're going to look at that and go, "No, I don't want to go there." Because I might come back. I might have to do what Lillestrøm Carlsen had to do and retire because I've had concussions, because this league doesn't want to protect me.
Well, talking of that, our good friend Kenwyn Jones has tweeted us. Andrew Hotham of the Cardiff Devils has tweeted, "Did anyone really expect anything different with that decision today? For some reason, protecting players isn't the first priority in this league." Andy, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. What I will say, though, is we've seen time and time again players speak out about it in the past, and not necessarily about DOPS, just in general. I will always remember when Dan Tessier left Nottingham halfway through the season and went to, was it Switzerland he went to?
It was, yeah. He
made a comment afterwards saying that, he didn't feel safe in the league, and that, it's a real problem that we've got. That being said, he came back. Now, I agree that that it isn't the player safety isn't necessarily as high up the agenda in the Elite League as it perhaps should be. But again, now if I've got this wrong, I apologise. But I know it was definitely one of the Hothams, but. I agree with what he says. It isn't in their priority. But if it was Andrew Hotham, he did break Jeff Dimmon's hand with a slash while he was lying on the ice. So, I'd take it with a pinch of salt in that sense. But I do, with the general gist of what he says, I completely agree. The league as a whole, their main objectives as a collective should be. Publicity, should be things like TV deals, marketing, media, all that sort of stuff. But as far as on ice goes, apart from having the facility to train referees and get referees and all that sort of stuff, player safety is the big one, and it's something that realistically could be so easily, or should be so easily implemented, and for whatever reason, it really isn't, and it's frustrating as fans. It must be even worse for players, because they're the ones that are going through it. And you've only got to look at today with the amount of questions we've had in, the amount of talk that's doing the rounds. I've seen that it's DOPS is trending in places and stuff like that. You've only got to look at that and see how many people are talking about it, and realise that surely the league must see this now. They must see it and must look at it, and I would like to think they must be doing something about it. But by the same token, we've seen it time and time again, and I do think to sort of throw back to the question, I do think in some respects it is damaging. The good stuff that the league does in other areas. Obviously, the point was made about Cardiff and Nottingham in this season in the CHL, but I think there's been some other good stuff around the league, this season and seasons past that do then get sort of forgotten about because of something completely ridiculous like this. And like Tina says, you can do the world of good, but as soon as the bad thing happens or the bad thing comes out, that's all people remember. It's all people care about, and rightly or wrongly, that's how it will always be. And no matter how good a league we have, you've only got to look at the NHL with at times their decisions. They still get a lot of flack for their decisions, but there's a lot of just cause for the decisions that have happened today, because they are damaging the reputation of this league.
Okay. Just something I want to pick up on what you said about officials there, Andy, and player safety. Does that go hand in hand somewhat? I mean, we still have a 3-man official system in this country, where every other top league has a 4-man. Is it time we just went, you know what, it's a 4-man system? Because surely that would help.
Well, we've been saying this for a couple of years, haven't we? I see Simsy wrote an article in the Sheffield Star referencing the Freta thing. There's a couple of paragraphs that he talks about going into, they've just not invested in the officials like we need to. And poor old Hicksy's taking all the blame for all this kicking off. He's one man. He is one man that's got to control a game that's being played at 300 mile an hour.
Real time, yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't have eyes in the back of the head. The only thing we've got video replays for now is to see whether the puck crosses the line. So it's not like he can go and video review the hit after it all kicked off and dished out some punishment there and then. The game's too fast. We've improved the product in this league to the point where we're getting genuine NHLers coming over. You look at the roster we've assembled this year. There's class from top to bottom, and they're all in the prime of their career. These players are faster and quicker and stronger, and it's too much for one man to do. It wouldn't be so bad if the linesmen were qualified to the same sort of levels, and the linesmen could call penalties as the such, like they do in other sports. But they don't. And it's basically on one man to see everything that's going on off on the ice at exactly the same time. It's too much. And the abuse that the referees are getting, yes, everybody's going to make decisions, and some decisions you've got to question. There's been some ridiculous calls that we've seen in games. But how is that going to then want more referees to come and do that job? I wouldn't want to do it if I'm getting 6,000, 7,000 people screaming for me head every 2 minutes. But then if there's 2 referees on the ice, you see the different angles on things. I just think, for me, if the Elite League ever got a sponsor, the main thing that they should be investing in straight away is getting more officials into the league and doing a 4-man system for everything, not just select cup finals and what have you. I just think we took a real backward step when we got rid of that a couple of years ago. And sorry to jump on you, Andy.
Okay. Anyone else with anything to add?
Well, I mean, this is sort of a going round in circles kind of thing, but I think part of the reason, to take the money thing away from it, part of the reason we don't have the 4-man system is because we don't have the bodies, we don't have the referees. From what I understand, I mean, we've just added 2.
I disagree with that. I think it's more to do with the cost to the clubs.
Well, yeah, more to do with the cost, but also, don't forget we've added 2 new teams to this league, so you've got to have, that's another, if you've got the 4-man system, that's another 4 officials the 4 referees that you've got to find on a game day from what we had last year, and from what I understand, we haven't added anybody new. So it's, if I don't know exactly who is, sort of up to Elite League standard. I know there's some of the Elite League refs who were reffing in the EPIHL last season, but I think money and personnel is probably an issue. But it swings and roundabouts. If you have the 4-man system, there's probably less abuse flying around, and there'll be less for less for the referees to suffer through. But it's a very long-standing chicken and the egg argument, isn't it? And I don't think we're going to be seeing an end to that one anytime soon.
Andy, anything to add?
No.
Okie doke. Right, well, I think we will leave it there for now. Obviously, very top heavy on one subject, but I think after the outcry that was caused after DOPS made their decision, I think it's only right that we got the questions that we did, and only right that we spent quite a lot of our time discussing it. So thank you very much. If you sent a question in, and we're very, very sorry if we didn't get round to your question, but I'm sure you can appreciate we had an awful lot to get through in the time that we've got. So, but thank you anyway if you did take the time to get in touch with us. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much to Andy Haywood.
No worries, anytime.
Antoine Marie-Jeanne.
No worries, take care.
And Tina Taylor.
Ta-da!
We will be back on Monday evening live at 8:45 with the review podcast from the weekend as Panthers take on Milton Keynes and Coventry. Until then, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you very, very soon. This edition of the Ask TCW podcast was brought to you in association with our sponsors, the Bunkers Hill Hockley.